I grew up in a small town in Oregon where Friday night games weren't just entertainment. They were the entire social infrastructure. If you weren't connected to the team somehow, you were background noise. I understood that early. My parents understood it too, which is why when I turned 14, my father sat me down at the kitchen table and said, "Michael, you're trying out for basketball. You're good enough, and it's time." He wasn't wrong about my ability. I'd spent years in our driveway working on my shot, running drills my older cousin had taught me before he left for college. I was 6'1" as a freshman, coordinated, and I had good hands. Not exceptional, but good, solid. The kind of player who could contribute if given the chance. The tryouts were held in the gymnasium that smelled like decades of sweat and floor wax. About 40 kids showed up for 15 spots. I made the junior varsity team without much trouble. My shooting was consistent, my defense was acceptable, and I didn't make stupid decisions with the ball. The coach, a man named Robert Sullivan, watched me during the final scrimmage with his arms crossed, nodded once, and that was that. I was in. That first season was unremarkable in the best way possible. I came off the bench, played decent minutes, scored when I was supposed to, and felt like I was exactly where I needed to be. The older guys on varsity occasionally came to our practices, and I'd watch them with the kind of attention you give to people you're studying, learning their patterns, understanding what separated them from us. One of them was Kevin Parker. Kevin was a junior that year, already the starting point guard on varsity. He was 6'3", fast, and had the kind of natural charisma that made people orbit him without trying. He was good-looking in that clean-cut, all-American way that adults loved and students envied. Teachers smiled at him in hallways. Girls wrote his name in notebooks. Guys wanted to be near him, because proximity to Kevin meant you were somebody. I didn't think much about him that first year. He was 3 grades ahead in the social hierarchy, and we barely interacted. When we passed in the gym, he'd nod. Not friendly, not unfriendly, just acknowledging I existed in his universe. That was fine with me. Everything changed my sophomore year. I'd grown another 2 inches over the summer, putting me at 6'3". My shot had improved significantly after I'd spent June and July at a basketball camp 2 towns over, working with a coach who'd played Division II ball and actually understood shooting mechanics. When I came back for tryouts, I wasn't the same player who'd left in May. Coach Sullivan noticed immediately. During the first week of practice, he pulled me aside after a scrimmage, where I'd gone 4 for 6 from 3-point range, and said, "You've been working." "Yes, sir." "Keep it up. You're making varsity." I was 15 years old, and I'd just been told I was going to play on the team that mattered, the team that filled the gymnasium every Friday night, the team that was coached by Robert Sullivan, who'd been doing this for 23 years and had taken teams to the state semifinals 4 times. I should have been thrilled. I was terrified. Not of the basketball I knew I could play at that level. I was terrified of the social architecture I was about to enter. Varsity wasn't just a team. It was a hierarchy with rules I didn't fully understand, enforced by people who'd been navigating it longer than I had. Kevin Parker was now a senior, and he was the captain. The first week of practice, Kevin made it clear how things worked. He ran the team, not Coach Sullivan, not the assistant coaches, not the seniors who'd been there just as long. Kevin. He decided who got the ball in crunch time. He decided who was worth defending when someone from another team talked trash. He decided who ate lunch at the team table in the cafeteria. I tried to stay invisible, show up, work hard, keep my head down, earn my spot through performance. It worked for about 3 weeks. The first incident happened during a practice in late November. We were running a full-court press drill, and I was defending Kevin. He brought the ball up, and I stayed tight on him, not fouling, not reaching, just good, aggressive defense. He tried to split two defenders and I stepped in, drawing the charge, clean, textbook. I hit the floor hard, the whistle blew, and Coach Sullivan yelled, "Good position, Michael." I got up, jogged back down the court. Kevin walked past me and said, just loud enough for me to hear, "Don't get excited, bench warmer." I didn't respond. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Competitive trash talk, part of the game. But Kevin wasn't talking trash during the game. He was establishing something. Over the next few practices, I started noticing patterns. When I'd set a screen for Kevin during drills, he'd wave me off and call for someone else. When Coach Sullivan put me in the starting lineup for a scrimmage, Kevin would dominate the ball, freeze me out, then look at the coaches like I wasn't contributing. During water breaks, he'd gather the other starters around him. Andrew Mitchell, Thomas Carter, David Anderson, Stephen Foster, and they'd laugh about something, glancing at me just long enough to make it clear I wasn't included. I told myself I was being paranoid, that I needed to prove myself, that if I just played better, worked harder, it would resolve itself. The first game of the season, Coach Sullivan started me at shooting guard. I was ready. I'd visualized this moment for weeks. The gymnasium was packed, the student section was screaming, and when they announced my name during starting lineups, I heard my parents cheering from somewhere in the bleachers. The game started. Kevin brought the ball up, and for 32 minutes of game time, he almost never passed to me. I'd get open, raise my hand, and he'd either ignore me or swing the ball to the other side. When I did get the ball, usually from someone else, I'd make something happen. I hit 2 3-pointers in the first half. I assisted on a backdoor cut in the third quarter. Every time I touched the ball, I tried to prove I belonged. But the possessions were so few that by the fourth quarter, I felt like a ghost. We won by 11, and Kevin finished with 23 points and 8 assists. In the locker room afterward, everyone celebrated around him. Coach Sullivan praised his leadership. I sat in front of my locker, staring at the stat sheet someone had taped to the wall. My line, 21 minutes, 6 points, 1 assist. My father found me after the game in the parking lot. "You played well with what you got," he said carefully. "I was open," I said. "I was open so many times." He didn't argue, he just squeezed my shoulder and said, "Keep working." I thought it might improve, that maybe Kevin had just been nervous, trying to do too much, that as the season went on, he'd learn to trust me. It got worse. Game after game, the same pattern. I'd start, play 20 to 25 minutes, finish with 6 to 10 points, despite shooting well whenever I actually got the ball. Kevin would dominate possessions, finish with 20-plus points, and after each game, the local newspaper would run articles praising his leadership and court vision. I started tracking it obsessively. In the first 12 games, I averaged 4.2 shot attempts per game, despite playing starter minutes. Kevin averaged 18.3. When I mentioned it to one of the assistant coaches after practice, he said, "Kevin's the senior captain. The offense runs through him. Your role is to space the floor and play defense." "I can do more than that," I said. "Then prove it in practice." But in practice, the same patterns held. Kevin controlled everything, and because Coach Sullivan had built the entire offensive system around Kevin's ability to create, questioning it felt like questioning the foundation of the program. I started to doubt myself. Maybe I wasn't as good as I thought. Maybe the assistant coach was right. Maybe my role was just to space the floor. Maybe Kevin actually was making the right decisions, and I just couldn't see it because I was too focused on my own opportunities. The breaking point came in January. We were playing our biggest rival, a school from 30 miles away that we'd split with the previous season. The game was close, tied with 4 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I'd had a good game by my standards. 3 3-pointers, solid defense. I could feel the rhythm. I was seeing the court well. Coach Sullivan called a timeout with 90 seconds left, score tied at 58. In the huddle, he drew up a play, a pick and roll with Kevin and Thomas Carter, with me coming off a screen on the weak side. If they collapse on Kevin, he'll kick it to Michael on the wing, Coach said. Michael, be ready to shoot. I got it, Coach, I said. We broke the huddle. The gym was deafening. The student section was on their feet. Kevin brought the ball up, called for the screen. Thomas set it. Kevin drove left. Both defenders collapsed on him, exactly as Coach had predicted. I came off my screen on the right wing, completely open, 3 feet behind the three-point line, my spot. I raised my hand. Kevin saw me. I know he did. Our eyes met for a fraction of a second. He forced a contested layup through 2 defenders. Missed. They got the rebound. They scored on the other end. We lost by 2. In the locker room afterward, Coach Sullivan's face was red. Kevin, why didn't you kick it to Michael? He was wide open. Kevin didn't hesitate. I didn't see him. I thought I had the layup. You had 2 guys on you. I thought I could finish through contact. Kevin looked directly at me. Michael needs to call for the ball louder. I can't read his mind. The room went quiet. Everyone looked at me. I opened my mouth. I wanted to say, I did call for it. You saw me. You looked right at me. But the words caught in my throat because I could feel the weight of the moment. If I challenged Kevin here, in front of the whole team, in front of Coach Sullivan, I was making this something it couldn't come back from. I'll be louder, I said quietly. Kevin nodded, like that settled it. Coach Sullivan sighed and moved on to breaking down the game. I sat there with my hands shaking, staring at the floor, realizing that Kevin had just lied, directly, deliberately, and gotten away with it because challenging him would have cost more than it gained. That night, I lay in bed replaying the moment, the eye contact, the deliberate decision not to pass, the easy deflection in the locker room, and I understood something that should have been obvious from the beginning. Kevin didn't want me to succeed, not because I'd done something to him, not because of some personal conflict, but because my success complicated his narrative. He was the star, the captain, the player everything ran through. And if I was also good, if I was also capable of taking over games, then the story became more complicated. The spotlight had to be shared, so he made sure it wasn't. And because he was the captain, because he was senior, because Coach Sullivan had built everything around him, there was no obvious way to fight it that didn't make me look selfish or difficult. I was trapped. The next few weeks were the worst of my life up to that point. I kept showing up to practice, kept working, kept trying to prove myself, but the weight of it was crushing. I'd lie awake at night replaying possessions, wondering what I could have done differently, wondering if I was wrong, if maybe Kevin really hadn't seen me, if maybe I was just being paranoid and selfish. My grades started slipping. I stopped hanging out with friends outside of basketball because I didn't have the energy to pretend everything was fine. My mother asked me one night at dinner if I was okay, and I told her I was just tired from the season. She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. In February, we had a team dinner at Kevin's house. His parents were wealthy. His father owned a commercial real estate company, and their house was the kind of place where everything was tasteful and expensive without being showy. Huge kitchen, professionally decorated living room, a finished basement with a pool table and a massive TV. The team showed up around 6. Kevin's mother had made pasta and salad, and we ate in their dining room with the good plates. Kevin sat at the head of the table, his father beside him, and held court. He told stories about games, made everyone laugh, and played the role of the beloved captain with perfect ease. I sat 3 seats down, eating quietly, trying to be invisible. After dinner, we went down to the basement. Someone put on a basketball game, and people spread out across the couches. Kevin and a few of the other seniors were standing by the pool table, talking about colleges. Kevin had committed to a Division II school about 200 miles away, and they were discussing what it would be like to play at the next level. I was sitting on a couch by myself, half watching the game on TV, when Kevin called across the room, "Hey, Michael." I looked up. "Yeah? You ever think about playing in college?" The room got quieter. People were watching now. "I don't know," I said carefully. "Maybe Division III or something." Kevin smiled. Not mean, just knowing. "Yeah, maybe. You'd need to get more confident first, though. Can't be scared to call for the ball." A few guys laughed. Not cruel laughter, just agreement. Like Kevin had made an observation that was self-evidently true. I felt my face get hot. "I call for it." "Not loud enough, man. You heard Coach? You've got to be aggressive." He said it like he was helping me, like he was a mentor offering advice, and I understood in that moment exactly what he was doing. He was rewriting the narrative. The reason I wasn't succeeding wasn't because he froze me out. It was because I wasn't aggressive enough, because I was too passive, because I lacked confidence, and because he was the captain, because he'd been there longer, because everyone liked him. His version of the story became the official version. I stood up. "I'm aggressive enough." Kevin's smile didn't change. "Hey man, I'm just trying to help. Don't get defensive." "I'm not getting defensive. I'm telling you I call for the ball. You just don't pass it." The room went completely silent. Kevin's smile faded. He straightened up from where he'd been leaning against the pool table. "What are you saying?" I should have stopped. I should have laughed it off, made a joke, diffused it, but I was so tired. So tired of being invisible, so tired of pretending. "I'm saying you freeze me out, on purpose, and everyone here knows it." For a second, nobody moved. Then, Kevin walked over to where I was standing. He was calm, terrifyingly calm. "Michael, I think you need to leave. This isn't your house. Actually, it is, and you just accused me of sabotaging you in front of the whole team. So yeah, I'm asking you to leave." I looked around the room. Everyone was staring at me, not with sympathy, with discomfort, with the expression people get when someone's breaking a social rule. They don't have the vocabulary to defend, but know has been broken. Nobody said anything. I left. I walked out of Kevin's basement, up the stairs, through his perfect house, and out into the February cold. I called my father from the sidewalk and asked him to pick me up. When he arrived 20 minutes later and asked what happened, I told him I didn't feel well. He knew that wasn't true, but he drove me home anyway. The next day at school, everything changed. I walked into the building and felt it immediately. The way people looked at me, or didn't look at me, the way conversation stopped when I passed. I wasn't imagining it. Something had shifted overnight. At lunch, I sat at the table where I usually sat with some guys from the team. They were already there. When I sat down, the conversation died. After about 30 seconds of silence, Andrew Mitchell stood up and said, "We're actually going to go grab something from the library." They all left, all of them. I sat there alone with my lunch tray, understanding that whatever had happened at Kevin's house the night before had been dissected, analyzed, and judged. And the verdict was that I was the problem. In practice that afternoon, Coach Sullivan pulled me aside before we started. "Michael, I heard there was an incident at Kevin's house last night." "Yes, sir." "You want to tell me what happened?" I thought about it. I could explain. I could lay out the pattern, the freeze-outs, the possessions, the deliberate undermining. But what would that accomplish? Coach Sullivan had built his entire offense around Kevin. Kevin was the senior captain. Kevin was beloved. If I made this a referendum on Kevin's leadership, I would lose. I said something I shouldn't have, I told Coach Sullivan. I was frustrated. About what? About My role on the team. Coach Sullivan nodded slowly. Michael, you're a talented player, but you're a sophomore playing on a varsity team. Kevin's a senior captain. He's earned the right to have the ball in his hands. Your job is to trust the system and do your part. Yes, sir. Good. Now go apologize to Kevin and let's move past this. I found Kevin stretching before practice. Kevin, can I talk to you? He looked up. What's up? I'm sorry about last night. I was frustrated, and I said something I shouldn't have. Kevin studied me for a long moment. Then he smiled. It's all good, man. We're teammates. But you've got to learn to control that frustration, you know? Can't let emotions mess with team chemistry. I know. Cool, we're good. He offered his hand. I shook it, and I understood that I'd just surrendered completely. The rest of the season was torture. I kept playing, kept starting, but my minutes dropped. My shot attempts dropped. Kevin's control over the offense became even more absolute, and because I'd publicly challenged him and been forced to apologize, any future complaint would just confirm that I was the problem, the immature sophomore who couldn't handle his role. We made it to the second round of the state playoffs. Lost to a school from Portland by 15. Kevin scored 31 points in his final game. The local newspaper ran a feature about his high school career, calling him one of the greatest players to ever wear the uniform. I finished the season averaging 6.8 points per game. At the end of season banquet, Coach Sullivan gave out awards. Kevin won MVP. Andrew Mitchell won Most Improved. Thomas Carter won Best Defensive Player. I won nothing. My father sat beside me during the banquet, and I could feel his anger, not at me, at the situation. But there was nothing he could say. Nothing anyone could say. The season was over. Kevin was graduating. It was done. Except it wasn't done, not for me. Because after the banquet, as people were standing around eating cake and taking photos, Kevin found me by the water fountain. He was holding his MVP trophy, still wearing his suit from the ceremony. Hey, Michael. Hey. I just wanted to say, no hard feelings about this season, okay? I know it was tough for you, but you'll get your chance next year. You'll be the guy. He said it with total sincerity, like he believed it, like he'd been a good mentor, helping me learn patience. Thanks, I said. He patted my shoulder and walked away. I stood there holding my empty plate, watching him take photos with his family and his girlfriend, and I felt something inside me break and then reform into something different. I wasn't angry anymore. Anger was too hot, too uncontrolled. I was cold. That night, I lay in bed and made a decision, not a dramatic one, not a revenge fantasy, just a simple recognition of reality. Kevin Parker had taught me something valuable. He'd shown me that charisma and social positioning could override competence, that control of the narrative mattered more than objective performance, that the person who controlled access to opportunity had more power than the person with talent. And if that was how the world worked, then I needed to learn to play that game better than Kevin ever had. Not by being more charismatic, not by being more likable, by becoming untouchable. The summer after my sophomore year, I worked at my uncle's landscaping company. 50 hours a week in the Oregon heat, mowing lawns, trimming hedges, hauling rocks. I saved every dollar. My parents offered to let me keep some money for spending, but I told them to deposit it all. I also stopped playing basketball. Not forever, just for the summer. I didn't go to the open gyms. I didn't attend the team camps. I didn't touch a ball for 3 months. My father asked me about it once in July. You're not training? No? You planning to play next year? I don't know yet. He looked at me for a long time, and I think he understood that something had fundamentally changed, but he didn't push. He just said, okay. In August, I told Coach Sullivan I was quitting the team. He asked me to reconsider. He said I had real potential, that I could be a leader as a junior, that this could be my breakout year. I thanked him for believing in me and told him I was done. "Is this about Kevin?" he asked. "No, sir, it's about me." And that was true, in a way. It was about me, about what I wanted to become, and it wasn't a basketball player. When school started my junior year, I felt like a ghost. The people who'd known me as that guy on the team didn't know how to categorize me anymore. I wasn't part of the sports hierarchy. I wasn't part of any hierarchy. I was nobody. And for the first time, in a year, I could breathe. I threw myself into schoolwork, not because I loved learning, but because I understood that grades were leverage. They were quantifiable, objective proof of competence that nobody could spin or reinterpret. I took advanced classes. I studied constantly. I joined the academic decathlon team, not because I cared about academic competition, but because it looked good on college applications. By the end of first semester, I had a 4.0 GPA. By the end of the year, I was ranked third in my class. I also got a job at a local accounting firm doing data entry. It was boring, tedious work, but it paid better than landscaping, and I was inside with air conditioning. I worked every weekday after school and Saturdays. I saved everything. My social life disappeared completely. I ate lunch in the library. I didn't go to football games or parties. When people asked what happened to me, if I'd fallen off the face of the earth, I just shrugged and said I was busy. The truth was, I was building something. I didn't know exactly what yet, just that it required resources, focus, and time. So I accumulated all three. Senior year, I took every AP class the school offered. I studied for the SAT like it was a religion, taking practice tests every weekend until I could execute them in my sleep. When I took the real exam in October, I scored 1520. I applied to 11 universities. Not the Ivy League, I wasn't delusional, but strong state schools and a few private universities with good business programs. I wrote my essays about resilience and self-directed growth, carefully avoiding any mention of basketball or conflict. In March, I got into the University of Washington's Business School with a partial academic scholarship. The day I found out, my mother cried. My father shook my hand and said, "You earned this." I didn't feel triumphant. I felt like I'd taken the first real step. I graduated high school, ranked second in my class. At graduation, I sat in the section with the honor students, while Kevin Parker, who'd flamed out of his Division II program after one semester and come back home, sat in the bleachers with his family. We didn't speak. We didn't make eye contact. I barely thought about him. The University of Washington was a different universe. 45,000 students. World-class professors. Seattle 20 minutes away. Nobody knew who I'd been in high school. Nobody cared. I lived in the dorms my freshman year, worked part-time at a campus computer lab, and attacked my classes with the same intensity I'd brought to everything since quitting basketball. I joined the business school's investment club. I networked aggressively, not in a social way, but in a strategic way, identifying professors and upperclassmen who could teach me practical skills. By sophomore year, I'd secured an internship at a financial services firm in Seattle. It was grunt work, building spreadsheets, running analyses, but I learned how money actually moved, how deals were structured, how people with capital thought. I also started a side venture with two friends from the investment club. We launched a business helping small companies optimize their supply chains using software we built ourselves. It was scrappy, barely profitable, but we won a university startup competition that came with $10,000 in seed funding. We used that money to improve the software and landed our first real client, a regional distributor that paid us $15,000 for a 6-month engagement. We were 20 years old and suddenly running a real company. By the time I was a junior, our little business was generating enough revenue that I could quit my part-time job. We hired 2 other students to help with development. We pitched to accelerators. We got rejected by most of them, but accepted into one based in Portland that gave us $50,000 in exchange for 10% equity. The business started to scale. We weren't getting rich, but we were solving real problems and getting paid for it. I learned to pitch. I learned to negotiate. I learned to recognize when someone was trying to exploit inexperience and how to shut it down politely but firmly. I graduated with a 3.85 GPA, a degree in finance, and a business that was generating $200,000 in annual revenue. I also graduated with no student debt, $23,000 in personal savings, and a job offer from a venture capital firm in San Francisco. I took the job. San Francisco was a different game entirely. The VC firm, Foster Capital Partners, was mid-sized but aggressive, known for finding promising startups early and scaling them fast. My role was junior analyst, which meant I spent most of my time reading pitch decks, building financial models, and sitting in on due diligence meetings. I worked 80-hour weeks. I learned to spot red flags in pitch presentations. I learned how investors actually thought, how they balanced risk, how they evaluated founders, how they decided when to push and when to walk away. After 2 years, I was promoted to associate. My salary jumped to $140,000 plus performance bonuses. I also started making small angel investments on my own, $5,000 here, $10,000 there, in companies I believed in. Most of them failed. 2 broke even. 1, a logistics automation startup, got acquired for $30 million 18 months after I invested. My $5,000 stake turned into $75,000. I reinvested everything. By the time I was 27, I'd been promoted to principal at Foster Capital. I was leading deals now, sitting across tables from founders and making investment decisions that moved millions of dollars. I was good at it, not because I was naturally charismatic or because people loved me, but because I was rigorous. I did the work. I found the problems nobody else saw. I built models that held up under scrutiny. I also launched my own venture fund, Reynolds Ventures, with $2 million raised from high net worth individuals I'd met through Foster Capital. The fund focused on early-stage B2B software companies, and I ran it alongside my work at Foster until I had enough traction to leave and focus on it full-time. That transition happened when I was 29. Reynolds Ventures had completed 8 investments, and 3 of them were showing serious growth. 1 had already returned 4x our initial investment. Limited partners were getting excited. I raised a second fund, $8 million, and suddenly I wasn't just an investor. I was a fund manager. By the time I was 31, Reynolds Ventures was managing $23 million across 2 funds. We'd had 4 exits, 3 of which were profitable. My personal net worth, between my carry on the funds, my earlier angel investments, and my savings, was somewhere around $3 million. I wasn't wealthy by San Francisco standards, but I was independent. I answered to my LPs, but nobody controlled my day-to-day. I had leverage. I had built exactly what I'd set out to build, an untouchable position. And then Kevin Parker called me. It was a Tuesday in October. I was sitting in my office, a small space in a shared building south of Market Street, reviewing a pitch deck for a financial software company when my phone buzzed with a call from an unknown Oregon number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello? Hey, is this Michael? The voice was familiar in a way that made my stomach drop. Yes, who's this? It's Kevin Parker from high school. I said nothing for a long moment. Then, okay. Man, I wasn't even sure this was the right number. Found it through LinkedIn. How have you been? Fine. What can I do for you, Kevin? Right, yeah, I'll get to it. I heard through the grapevine you're in venture capital now. That's amazing, man. Seriously, I always knew you were smart. Remember when we used to... Kevin, I'm in the middle of something. Why are you calling? A pause. Right. Okay. So I'm working on a business. Fitness training. We've got an app. We've got clients. And we're looking to raise some capital to scale. I saw you're running a fund and thought, maybe this could be a fit. I leaned back in my chair. You want to pitch me your startup? Yeah, if you're interested. I know you're probably busy, but I thought it was worth reaching out. We go way back, right? Send me the deck, I said. I'll take a look. Seriously? That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it. Kevin? Yeah? Just send the deck. I'll review it and get back to you. Will do. And hey, it's really good to hear your voice. We should grab a drink sometime, catch up properly. Send the deck, I repeated, and hung up. I sat there staring at my phone, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not satisfaction, just cold. Recognition. Kevin Parker, who'd spent an entire season systematically undermining me, who'd frozen me out, rewritten the narrative, and made me apologize for calling him out, was now asking me for money. And he didn't even realize who he was talking to. The pitch deck arrived that evening. I opened it on my laptop while eating dinner at my desk. It was bad, not amateurish. Kevin had clearly hired someone to design it, but strategically incoherent. The company was called Parker Performance Training, and the value proposition was a fitness app that connected users with personal trainers for virtual sessions. The market analysis was vague. The financial projections were fantasy. The competitive landscape section ignored obvious threats. The team slide showed Kevin as CEO and founder. His credentials: former collegiate athlete, 10+ years experience in fitness and personal training, passionate about helping people achieve their goals. No technical co-founder, no business side experience. No evidence that Kevin understood software, scaling, customer acquisition, or anything else required to build a venture-backable company. It was exactly the kind of deck I rejected within 3 minutes of reading. But I kept reading anyway. By the time I finished, I understood exactly what was happening. Kevin had been working as a personal trainer since flaming out of college. He probably made decent money. Personal training could be lucrative in the right market, but he'd reached the limit of what that model could provide. He couldn't scale his time, he'd hit a ceiling. So he'd looked around, seen other fitness companies raising venture capital, and thought, I can do that. He'd probably spent his savings building this app. He'd probably convinced himself that his charisma and his network would be enough to make it work. And when he couldn't get traction with investors who didn't know him, he'd started reaching out to people from his past who might give him a break. People like me. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark of my office thinking. I could reject this in 15 seconds. Send a polite email saying the opportunity wasn't a fit for our fund's thesis. Kevin would never know I'd even really looked. Or I could do something else. I called Kevin the next morning. Michael, hey man, thanks for getting back to me so fast. I reviewed the deck, I said. I've got some thoughts. Great, that's great. What did you think? It needs work, a lot of work, but I see potential. A pause, then cautiously, really? The market's there, but your go-to-market strategy is unclear, your unit economics don't make sense, and you don't have the technical depth to scale this properly. Okay, yeah, we're still figuring some of that out. Kevin, if you're serious about raising money, you need to fix those things. I'm willing to help you do that, but it's going to take time, and you're going to need to be coachable. Absolutely, I'm totally coachable. What do you need from me? First, we're going to rebuild the deck from scratch. I'll send you a framework. You're going to fill it out with real data. Then we're going to talk through your financials and figure out what's broken. After that, we'll see if this is actually investable. Man, Michael, I really appreciate this. Seriously. Not a lot of people would take the time. I'm not doing this as a favor, I said, my voice flat. I'm doing this because if the business can be fixed, it might be a fit for our fund. But if it can't, I'll tell you that too. Understood? Understood. Yeah, totally. Good. I'll send the framework by end of day. Plan to spend the next week working on it. Block out time. This isn't something you do in between training sessions. I will. I'm on it. I hung up and immediately sent him a framework I used for early-stage due diligence. 40 pages of questions covering every aspect of the business. Customer acquisition costs, lifetime value, churn, rates, competitive positioning, technical architecture, team gaps, regulatory risks. It was the same framework I used to evaluate every deal. The same framework that helped me separate real opportunities from fantasies. Kevin would either do the work or he wouldn't. And that would tell me everything I needed to know. Over the next 6 weeks, I worked with Kevin to rebuild his business plan. We had calls every Tuesday and Thursday. I'd assign him homework, talk to 10 potential customers and document their feedback, build a financial model that showed realistic customer acquisition costs, research competitors, and identify their weaknesses. He'd complete the assignments, and we'd review them together. To his credit, Kevin did the work. He showed up to every call. He answered the questions. He followed the framework. He also started to realize how much he didn't know. On our 4th call, after I'd walked him through why his revenue projections were off by an order of magnitude, he said, "Man, I had no idea how complicated this was. I thought you just built a good product and people bought it." "That's what everyone thinks," I said. "That's why most startups fail." "Did you always know all this stuff?" "No. I learned it the same way you're learning it now, by doing the work." "Where'd you learn it?" "College, my first startup, my first real job, everywhere." "You had a startup?" "In college, yeah. Supply chain software. We sold it to a larger company for a small exit." "Damn, that's impressive." A pause. "I had no idea you were doing all that. I kinda lost track of you after high school." "I kept a low profile," I said. "Yeah, I remember you quit basketball. Everyone was surprised. You were good." I said nothing. "Anyway," Kevin continued, "I'm glad we're working together on this. Feels like, I don't know, full circle or something." "Just keep doing the homework," I said, and ended the call. By mid-December, we had a complete business plan. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. Kevin had pivoted the model based on customer feedback. Instead of trying to build a generic fitness app, he'd focused on a specific niche: corporate wellness programs. Companies would pay for their employees to access personal training sessions via the app, and Kevin had pre-sold 3 pilot programs to local businesses. The unit economics actually worked. The market was real. The competitive positioning made sense. I scheduled a final call to go over everything. "So," Kevin said when we connected, "what do you think? Is it investable?" "It's better," I said. "You've done the work. The business model is sound. The traction is early but real." "Does that mean you'll invest?" "No." Silence. "Wait, what? Why not?" "Because it's not a fit for my fund's thesis. We focus on B2B software with network effects and high margins. This is a services business with software components. The margins are capped by the trainer supply. It's a good business, Kevin, but it's not venture scale. But I said I'd help you figure out if it was investable. And it is. Just not for my fund. So what am I supposed to do? You have a few options. You could bootstrap it using the revenue from your pilot programs. You could raise from angel investors who understand services businesses. Or you could find a strategic partner, maybe a larger wellness company that wants to add your corporate model to their offering. I don't know any angel investors, and I can't bootstrap this. I need capital to hire trainers and build out the tech. Then you need to network, go to startup events, join a local entrepreneur group, build relationships. Michael, man, I've spent 6 weeks working with you on this. I thought we were working together so you could understand whether this business made sense. Now you know it does, but that doesn't mean I'm obligated to invest. Another long silence. Then, is this because of high school? I felt my hand tighten around the phone. What? You know, the basketball stuff, the way things ended. Kevin, I haven't thought about high school in 10 years. Come on, man. I know I wasn't always, I was the captain, and maybe I was too focused on my own game, but that was a long time ago. We were kids. This has nothing to do with high school, I said, keeping my voice level. This is about investment thesis. Parker Performance Training is not a fit for Reynolds Ventures. That's a business decision, not a personal one. Okay, yeah, I hear you. He sounded deflated, defeated. So that's it? 6 weeks of work and you're just out? I'm not out, I told you. You have options. You have a real business now, a plan. You're in a much better position than you were 6 weeks ago. Right, okay, thanks for your time, I guess. Kevin. Yeah? Good luck with it. Genuinely. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. Sure. The call ended. I sat in my office and looked out at the San Francisco skyline, the late afternoon light turning the buildings orange and gold, and felt absolutely nothing. 3 months later, in March, Kevin called again. Michael, hey, I need to talk to you. His voice sounded different, strained. What's going on? The business isn't working. I've been trying to raise money, but nobody's interested. The pilot programs ended and 2 of the 3 companies didn't renew. I'm running out of cash. That's part of building a company. It's hard. I know it's hard, but I'm about to lose everything. My savings are gone. I'm behind on rent. I need help. What kind of help? A bridge loan or an investment. Something to keep things going for another 6 months while I figure this out. I leaned back in my chair. Kevin, I already told you this isn't a fit for my fund. I know, but as a personal investment, you've got money, right? I just need 50,000. I'll pay you back. Kevin, please, his voice cracked. Michael, I know we weren't close in high school. I know I wasn't always a good teammate, but we go back, man. We're from the same town. And I'm asking you, not as an investor, but as, I don't know, as someone who knew me before all this. I sat there listening to him breathe on the other end of the line. Do you remember the game against Central? I asked. What? Junior year, January. We were tied, 90 seconds left. Coach drew up a play. I was wide open on the wing. You drove into 2 defenders instead of passing. Silence. You looked right at me, Kevin. I know you saw me. And you took the contested layup anyway. Michael, we lost that game by 2 points. And in the locker room, you said you didn't see me. You said I needed to call for the ball louder. That was 15 years ago. I know exactly how long ago it was. And I remember the entire season, every time you froze me out. Every time you took credit. Every time you rewrote the story so you were the hero and I was the supporting character who just needed to be more aggressive, more confident, more something. Michael, I was 18 years old. I was a stupid kid trying to be a leader and I made mistakes. But I can't change that now. I don't need you to change it. I just need you to understand something. What? You taught me that control matters more than talent. That the person who controls the narrative has more power than the person who does the work. That charisma and positioning can override competence. Okay, I'm sorry if I made you feel that way. But what does that have to do with, I learned from you, Kevin. I spent the last 13 years building exactly what you taught me to build. Control, leverage. A position where nobody could undermine me or rewrite my story. He said nothing. And now you're asking me to give you money, I continued. You're asking me to bail out a business that isn't viable. You're asking me to do that because we go back. Because we're from the same town. Because you knew me before all this. Yes, I am, because I don't have anyone else to ask. That's not my problem. Jesus, Michael, I'm about to lose everything. I lost everything 15 years ago, I said quietly. I lost a season. I lost confidence. I lost the belief that working hard and being talented was enough. And you were the one who taught me that lesson, so I'm grateful, actually. You helped me understand how the world really works. So this is revenge. No, this is business. Parker Performance Training isn't a fit for my fund, and I'm not going to give you $50,000 of my personal money for a business that's failing. That's not revenge. That's economics. You could help me. You have the resources. I could, but I'm choosing not to. Just like you chose not to pass me the ball. Just like you chose to undermine me all season. You had the ball in your hands, and you decided I wasn't worth the assist. We were in high school, and now we're not. Now you need something from me. And I'm making the same choice you made. I'm deciding you're not worth my resources. The line went silent. I could hear him breathing, and I wondered if he was crying. I'm sorry, he said finally. For high school. For all of it. I was an asshole. I know that. I believe you. Then help me, please. I'm begging you. No. Michael, Kevin, I'm going to hang up now. Don't call this number again. If you reach out via email or LinkedIn, I'll block you. We're done. You're really going to do this? I already did it. Goodbye, Kevin. I ended the call. Then I blocked his number. I didn't hear from Kevin again directly, but I heard about him. 6 months later, a mutual acquaintance from high school mentioned during a phone call that Kevin had moved back to our hometown. He'd shut down his company. He was working at a gym again, teaching classes, training clients, making $40,000 a year. The acquaintance said it like it was tragic, like Kevin had fallen from some great height. I said something appropriate. That's too bad, and changed the subject. Another year passed. Reynolds Ventures closed our third fund, $45 million. We had our first major exit when one of our portfolio companies got acquired for $200 million. My carry on that deal alone was north of $800,000. I bought a house in Marin County, nothing ostentatious, just a clean, modern place with a view of the bay. I dated occasionally. I had friends, mostly other investors and founders. I traveled when I had time. I was, by any objective measure, successful. But I was also alone in a way that was hard to explain to people who hadn't built their lives around a single cold principle. Never give anyone the power to undermine you. I thought about that sometimes late at night, sitting on my deck overlooking the water. I thought about the kid I'd been at 15, eager, hopeful, believing that hard work and talent were enough. I thought about the moment in Kevin's basement when I'd stood up and challenged him, thinking truth would matter. I thought about how completely I'd been crushed, and I thought about the person I'd become in response. Disciplined, strategic, untouchable, alone. The thing nobody tells you about revenge, even the kind that isn't really revenge, just the natural consequence of someone needing something you have the power to give or withhold, is that it doesn't feel how you think it will. When Kevin called begging for help, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt nothing. And that, more than anything else Kevin had ever done to me, felt like the real loss. Because somewhere along the way, in building all this control, all this leverage, all this untouchable power, I'd stopped feeling much of anything at all. The teenager who'd called for the ball with hope in his eyes, who'd believed that being open meant you'd get the pass, that doing the work meant you'd get the reward, was gone. He'd been replaced by someone who could look at a desperate person from his past and make a calculated decision not to help, not because helping was impossible, but because helping would violate the principle that had guided every decision for 13 years. Never give anyone the power to define you. Never depend on anyone's goodwill. Never be vulnerable. Never be the person calling for the ball. Always be the person who decides whether to pass. I won. Kevin lost. And sitting on my deck that night, looking at the lights of San Francisco across the bay, I understood that the victory had cost me something I'd never get back. But I also understood I'd make the same choice again, every single time. Because the alternative, being that hopeful 15-year-old, waiting for someone to see him, to value him, to pass him the ball, was worse than any loneliness. That kid was never coming back, and I was fine with that. I had to be. Stories like this happen more often than we think. Subscribe if you want to hear the ones that usually stay unspoken. And if this story made you pause, a like helps the channel grow.